Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon here in our offices in the Bronx, New York. I am happy to be here with you today. It is December 27th, approximately 10:30 in the evening, and I was going to wait until Sunday to address this, but it's a pretty big subject. It's a pretty big issue in the news right now, so I want to deal with it in a separate video, and maybe on Sunday during the live stream I'll do a smaller review of this. But I wanted to talk about the H1B visas because this isn't a new argument, this isn't a new problem, and it's important that we deal with this issue in its fullness because it has a big impact. Now, a lot of the news media are talking about this is an issue about immigration. A lot of people are talking about the difference between Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and Donald Trump in his first administration. Let's clarify a few of the details and get to the truth of the matter. What is really happening with the H1B visa, and how does it really affect you, the average American citizen? Now, before we get started with that, I do want to say that if this is the first time you're seeing our channel, we welcome you and thank you for being part of our audience. We want you to know that every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you to hear what you have to say about all of the issues that affect each and every one of us. We're in Season 6, Episode 52 this week, and we'll be going into Season 7 in January of 2025. We hope you will join us this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we address all of the issues, the year in review for 2024, and get ready for 2025. Now, with all of that said, what's going on right now? At the moment, we see that the mainstream news media are going hog wild. They have been looking for opportunities to attack the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, about what he plans to do and how to make him look as bad as possible, to put a negative light on the 47th presidency for the United States. Part of that is trying to say that there is no organization in the incoming administration, which seems absurd, but they are trying to make that argument. And one of those arguments is now about the H1B visa, something most Americans probably don't remember and haven't really addressed because it's been a hands-off subject in Congress for more than a decade. I know because I was fighting on this issue back in 2013 when I ran for Congress, so I am intimately aware with the H-1B visa situation. So we'll try and clarify it. But at this moment, what you are seeing in the mainstream news media is that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are at odds with other Republicans and other conservatives, not the Trump administration. This is an issue which Democrats and Republicans in the establishment are very much lockstep. They both agree about H-1B visas, as well as many big and small businessmen. So this is not really an issue that's political as much as it is about economy. It's about business and jobs going forward, although there is an immigration component to it. And I'm going to try and clarify that. Now, the big thing came up because about 1 month ago, one of the nominees for the Trump administration in charge of the AI, advising, being the czar for the AI, seemed to indicate that it may be worth looking into as part of the Department of Government Efficiency to determine whether or not they should remove the cap, the limit on the number of individuals who receive an H-1B visa. Now, I'm going to explain what that is in just one moment. And so that was the conversation that was started in November. Why are we talking about it today in December, just before it goes into the new year? Because the news media have run out of things they can attack the Trump administration about. But it's a big issue. It is, in fact, a big issue, and it deserves more attention. Now, one of the reasons that the mainstream news media have really latched onto this is because there was a recent statement, which you may or may not have heard about, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy saying that the U.S. tech industry needs migrants, not illegal aliens, but migrants, because America's talent is low, that we're not very good at business or in technology. In fact, you may have seen this quote, which came from, I believe this one was from Vivek Ramaswamy, and The Hill has quoted it, where a number of people who are super talented engineers and super motivated to be in the United States is far too low. This is from Elon Musk. I go on to quote, "The reason top companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers are, quote, native Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, a lazy and wrong explanation." He wrote on X, "A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture. American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, since the 1990s and likely longer, according to Vivek Ramaswamy. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champion or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers." Now, there is truth in that statement. We have to be very clear. That is a somewhat true statement. In America, we have a lot of people who are young, who are entitled. And this isn't as radical as people would like it to be. The news media are trying to radicalize this. Oh my God, how can you say that Americans aren't the best at being engineers? That there are people in other parts of the world who are better? Well, how about we go back to June 11th of 2024? Yahoo News and Finance had an article from Bazinga. 1 in 5 of recent college graduates brought a parent to their job interview. I want you to think about that. 1 in 5, about 20% of kids graduating from college had to bring their parents with them to the interview. This is from a December survey by Intelligent.com, and it was a surprising trend amongst recent college graduates. 19% of employers reported the candidates brought their parents to the job interview. This is 800 U.S. managers, directors, and executives that are making this statement. Almost half of the employers have had to fire recent college graduates, and 58% think recent graduates aren't ready for the workforce. Because of this, 38% of employers prefer to hire older workers instead of recent graduates. Well, that kind of says it all right there. Why did Vivek Ramaswamy say that mediocrity is the rule of the land? Why is it that we're seeing that Elon Musk is saying that Americans aren't innately, because of the culture, not the best pick, that foreign workers may be the best in STEM jobs? Well, we have the answer. And the answer comes from the articles and from the surveys from businesses right now. They have to bring their parents to go to an interview. They aren't ready to work. They're not capable of working. They don't have the skills to do the job. This isn't new news. So when we're looking at the groundwork, the base of what we're talking about, we have an American culture of graduates, recent college graduates, who believe they're entitled to higher and higher amounts of pay, the living wage that they often speak about in many colleges, but yet they don't have the skills to justify that higher wage, nor do they have the work ethic that we used to have in America in the 1980s, 1970s, and well before then. So they want to work less, get paid more, and they don't want to work as hard when they do actually work. That's the evidence we have right now. That's not very conducive for jobs in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields. These are very intensive, mentally intensive work. Now, not to say that there isn't other work that's also physically intensive that also college graduates and many of the youth do not do well in. And that is a problem, which is why employers are looking for other alternatives, whether that's an older worker or someone from overseas who is willing to do the hard work for less money. It's just simple business. That's the issue with H1B visas. That's the issue with STEM workers at this time. It's a question of businesses trying to say, what is the most cost-effective way to do the job? It's just that simple. And American college graduates aren't the best of the best. That's just the fact. And some people are upset about that. They get insulted about that because they think their college educations were really valuable. I mean, they spent a lot of money on that. So they must be really, really good if they spent that much money. But they're not. That's just the reality. Most of the people who have gotten degrees have overspent on those degrees, and they have no real world usefulness. They don't impart skills or capabilities in the real world. That's just the nature of what we have in America at this time. Now, this isn't a new issue. I've been talking about this for a very long time. In fact, I went and ran for Congress on this. As you can see, this is an article which I reposted from September 16th, 2013 on my old website, where I was talking about Representative Richard Hanna. Now, Mr. Hanna has passed away since this time, but I ran against Richard Hanna for the New York 22nd Congressional District in 2013-2014. I've met him. I've spoken with him in person. We've been on the campaign trail. And I followed his positions, the policies that he was supporting, and the impact that those policies had. Richard Hanna was a rhino. He was a Republican in name only. I absolutely, adamantly am against H1B visas. I forgot I didn't show you the page. I apologize. So, again, this is my old website that I had recently. I lost the website recently, but you can go to the Wayback Machine. You are able to see this article. The link will be in the description, so you'll be able to go to it for yourself. And you can see I was running against Representative Richard Hanna and many of the positions he had and the consequences of those positions that he had, which I disagreed with vehemently because, in my opinion, Richard Hanna was a rhino, a Republican in name only. And I said this to Richard Hanna's face. This is not something, I'm not talking badly about the dead. I'm not speaking behind his back. I said this to him in person. I said this to him on the campaign trail, speaking to many of the Republican Party members throughout the 8 counties that were in the New York 22nd District at that time. This is back in 2013. So I'm not saying anything I haven't said publicly nor that I have published in the past. One of the big issues I had that Representative Hanna was speaking about, and I've spoken about this on WUTQ, I've talked about this on NBF, I've talked on a WBGN and other news organizations at the time. It's the HR 2131, the Skills Visa Act. Now, in essence, what it would do is he wanted to increase the number of foreigners who would be able to get this. Matter of fact, let me take a step back. What is an H1B1 visa? Let me start there. The H1B1 visa is very simply its authorization for someone in a foreign country, predominantly India and China. Those are the ones who get the most of the H1B visas. But an individual from a foreign country is allowed to enter into the United States for approximately 3 years. They can get an extension, and many do. Now, the average, though, is about 3 years to come into the United States to work in a STEM job: science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, we're told over and over again that these are high-end, high-level jobs. That's not entirely true. Because when you call into a call center, depending on the nature of the business, the technology, if you're going about computer repair, if you're going in about something with your cell phone, very often those call centers, you know that you get someone who speaks with a very British accent. Well, that's an H1B worker. Very often, that's what they do. They go and work in call centers. This is considered high-end technical work, and it is under STEM, call centers. So when they say it's high-end, high-tech, it's very important, no, it isn't always. That's not necessarily true. It's the way the media wants it to seem to more easily justify giving out these visas to bring in individuals because they're highly specialized. They have degrees. They leave out critical information when they discuss this issue with the American people. They edit and omit certain critical facts, like many of the workers being call center workers. The fact is the business want these individuals because they're cheaper. It's just that simple. It's cheaper to get them than to pay for a union worker. It's cheaper than to get a new college graduate who believes that they are entitled to get more money and work less than someone from overseas. It's just that simple. Representative Richard Hanna wanted to increase the number of these visas to allow more foreigners to come into the United States to compete with American citizens and to take the jobs away from American citizens. At the time, in 2013, when I was speaking about this, I mentioned that what Representative Richard Hanna and those Republicans and other members of Congress that were supporting the removal of a limit, a cap on the number of H1B visas, they were going to effectively make more American citizens unemployed. That there is a flood. There is literally more American STEM workers than there are jobs. That's a fact. And I will show you the numbers from the government so that you can see this for yourself. We have more individuals who have STEM degrees than there are jobs available in the United States. So the question is a supply and demand. There is more people available. There is fewer jobs available. So the competition is very fierce because these jobs do tend to pay well, whether it's for someone overseas or whether it's someone in the United States. They pay better than the average job, but there aren't that many of them. In fact, there's only about 10 million STEM jobs in the United States in total at this time, and that will increase roughly to about 11-12 million by 2035, according to most estimates. So it's not a lot considering that there's over 164 million people who work in the United States at this time. It's only about 6% of all the jobs that are in America at this time. Again, this is from Congress.gov, and this is showing you Darrell Issa was one of the members who actually introduced the bill. Richard Hanna was one of those who was an early adopter. In fact, the only member of New York State that actually was supporting the idea of bringing in more foreigners to compete with American citizens to get STEM jobs. Now, one of the key things, and when I say that it's cheaper, I want you to understand that filing for the H1B visa is a long process. It has some difficulties in it, but the cost is an application is about $800, maybe a little bit less for the application. Small businesses pay about $500, and then they get the worker, which normally has a lower hourly rate than American citizens, and they don't have unions. So dollar for dollar, even including the fees, these individuals are cheaper to hire than American citizens, new recent college graduates who expect more pay and often join unions, which also have additional fees. Now, to be clear, in any given year, there's about 400,000 applications for H1B visas every year. 400,000, maybe even more. The current status is that there is a cap of 65,000 initial H1B visas with an extension and an additional overflow of another 20,000. Effectively, 85,000 H1B visas every single year. And every single year, that number is maxed out. In fact, it's more than 85,000, something, again, that is often overlooked by most of the mainstream news media, is that there are several exempt companies in the nation that are allowed to exceed the normal quota of H1B visa applicants from overseas. So the 85,000 number is the normal process for most companies which have a cap on how many individuals they can bring into the United States. But there are non-exempt companies that are allowed to bring even more. So it actually is over 85,000 every single year. And this is true going back far more than a decade. This is a couple of decades now. By the way, this data is coming from the American Immigration Council. Again, you have to go through a lot of different sources to find all of the pieces of data that no one source will tell you about H1B visas. They don't like you to know what's actually happening in regard to this. As an example, there is Axios, which is saying, what to know about the H1B visas that are fueling a divide in MAGA world? They're really not fueling a divide. Again, this was a suggestion to look into this as part of the Department of Government Efficiency. Is it more efficient for the United States to remove the cap or to keep the cap? And now we have the Biden administration at the last minute streamlining and changing the process altogether, which many businesses say will make it easier and better, but yet doesn't address the actual core problem. Is this increasing competition for high-end and high-paying jobs in America? Is it increasing that competition? Are more Americans unemployed and unable to pay off their student loans because of the competition of H-1B visas? That's one problem. There is a second problem, which is immigration, which I will get to in just a moment. But if you look at the article about Axios, it's about Elon Musk. It's about Elon Musk, his company, and his past. It has nothing really to do with what's going on with this issue. If you look through, they really won't tell you about this. When they say, what is the H1B visa scheme? They say it allows for highly skilled workers in specialty. Notice they have quotations around specialty occupations. They mean call centers. To live and work in the United States under a non-immigrant status, which is correct. These aren't immigrants. These are workers. This is a worker visa. But they become, in many cases, illegal aliens, and I will address that shortly. It enables American companies to employ foreign workers who have highly specialized theoretical or technical skills. That's the way they word it. That's not what happens in the real world, but that is the wording of the bills. Proponents argue that the program allows U.S. to retain a competitive edge in STEM fields by attracting the most highly skilled professionals worldwide. That would be accurate, except it's not like the United States has a dearth of individuals who are in STEM, who have learned STEM. We could have more, but we already have more individuals graduating in America with STEM degrees than there are jobs available. And that has been true for more than a decade. It's something that, again, in 2013, when I was running for Congress, we had 2 to 1. We had 2 students graduating with a STEM degree for every 1 job that was available, and it has only gotten worse since that time. Now, in the first Trump administration, Donald Trump realized that these were issues. These were significant problems, and that Americans were being negatively impacted. And so the 45th Trump administration made it their purpose to try and to cut by 1/3 the number of H-1B visas that were in America. That was not possible because judges in California said that the process by which Trump was trying to do that was incorrect and therefore overthrew him. I want to be very clear. They didn't say he didn't have the power to change the H-1B visa process. They didn't say that he couldn't cut the number of H-1B visas by 1/3. That wasn't the problem. that wasn't beyond the power of the president. They said they didn't agree with the process in which he did it. To quote NBC News, U.S. District Judge Jeffrey White in California said the government didn't follow transparency procedures, and its contention that the changes were an emergency response to the pandemic job losses didn't hold water because the Trump administration has floated the idea for some time but only published the rules in October. This was about transparency. This was about the emergency. But it wasn't about whether or not the Trump administration had the right and the ability. So that's one of the arguments that the left in the news media would like you to think, that this is impossible to change, that this is something that we have to have in America. That's not true. Nor do we need to have this many, nor do we need to increase it. Those aren't requirements. And the Trump administration was more than willing to cut the number of individuals who were receiving H1B visas by hundreds of thousands. Now, if you noticed in my article back in 2013, the expectation was that there would be 3.9 million jobs in STEM. That was new jobs being created in the STEM field. We were incorrect. As it turns out, according to NSB, Science and Engineering Indicators, according to the government, we see that there were 7.1 million workers in STEM as of the end of 2021. So we underestimated the amount of growth of STEM workers. There were, the need for STEM workers in America. In 2013, we thought that it would be just under 4 million. It wound up being 7.1 million. And as I said, as of this moment, there are a little over 10 million, a little bit less than 11 million STEM jobs in the United States at this time. But I said several times that there is an immigration component to this. And this is very important. This comes from Secretary Mayorkas under the Biden-Harris administration. This is, I believe, the most recent data from fiscal year 2022. And this is about the H1B visas and the number of individuals who overstay. As I mentioned, it's a temporary, the visa is for 3 years. It's temporary authorization to be in the United States for 3 years. But people overstay. Once they come into the United States, and they are allowed to bring their family, in many cases with them, into the United States, they're here for 3 years working, and then rather than leaving, there is a significant portion of the individuals, well, a number of people who do stay and continue to be in the United States, and they become illegal aliens. This is very similar to student visas and individuals who overstay that visa and become illegal aliens in that manner. Now, the total number of H1B visa overstays, that's what they say when you, they should be saying that they're criminals and they're illegal aliens because that's what they are at that point. But they called them, under the Biden administration, they call them overstays. Individuals who overstayed their visa, have no authorization to be in the United States, and yet are here. That's an illegal alien. That is a crime. The total number of overstays, and this is broken down by country, each and every country that the person is overstaying, and the rate of how many people. As an example, in people from Afghanistan, about 19% of them overstay their visa and become illegal aliens. From Angola, that number is 40%. From the Barbados, that number is 1.3%. From Bhutan, that's 60%. But according to the Biden-Harris administration, the total number of individuals with H1B visas that overstay their visa and become illegal aliens inside the United States with their families are 504,636. It's approximately 7.18 or 7%, we'll round it down, 7% of H1B visas are overstayed, and those individuals become illegal aliens. That's 500,000 illegal aliens in the United States fiscal year 2022. We are sure that that number has increased since fiscal year 2022 and now stands even more. That is a lot. That is a lot of illegal aliens in the United States. 500,000. That's larger than most cities in the United States. Now, we were talking about the number of STEM jobs. In the United States, the number of STEM degrees and certificates awarded, people who graduate with a STEM job, is over 600,000. Almost 750,000 individuals get a STEM degree in the United States. That's an associate, a bachelor's, a master's, or a doctor's degree. Overwhelmingly, most people get bachelor's degrees. That's a huge number. I want to be very clear about this. According to data from 2020 and 2021, there were 120,185 STEM degrees for international students. That's out of 670,567 STEM degrees issued in the United States. That's at all levels. That's whether you have a doctorate or a bachelor's, an associate's degree. Adding all the degrees together, 120,000 of them are for foreigners. Each year, there's about 18% of the individuals getting a degree are foreigners, and the remaining 83% are American citizens. This is kind of important when you start to understand some of the additional data about these STEM jobs. Right now, according to some of the data, depending on the source, you can see that there's about 2 million unfilled STEM jobs in America at this time. Again, it depends on which source you're looking at, and each different source has slightly different numbers. So I'm going with the data from Forbes because they are a credible international news agency. And according to Forbes, based on their research of the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's 82,000 new jobs every single year. Let's round that up and let's just say it's 100,000, just for the sake of simple numbers. 100,000 new jobs every year for the next decade. Well, according to the data, we have over 437,000 new individuals each year in America getting a bachelor's degree in STEM. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of Americans every year looking for those 100,000 jobs. That's every year. Okay, so let me try and sum this up a little bit because I've given you a lot of data that the mainstream news media doesn't want to put in front of you and don't want you to think about. What is the problem with STEM? Or rather, H1B visas and the way they address STEM jobs? Easy. Every time a business, no matter who the business is, it could be Amazon, it could be Tesla, it could be any number of a dozen tech companies and other companies as well. Every time they hire someone for a STEM job that is through an H1B visa, they save money and an American is unemployed. It's that simple. So the more H1B visas we have, the more Americans go without work. That is the problem. That was the problem in 2013 when Richard Hanna was supporting increasing the number of H1B visas. That's the problem today, whether it's Vivek Ramaswamy or Elon Musk or anyone else in the Trump administration suggesting this. Something that the Trump administration initially, the first Trump administration, 45, said no and tried to cut the number of foreigners in STEM in the United States by 1/3, because that would give more Americans more jobs. That's America first. And I think that the Trump administration will follow up and follow that same ideology again, that they will not just have a cap, but increase the amount of the cap, limit even further the number of foreigners who are going to be working in American STEM jobs, because it's good for America. It's good for America's economy. Now, the other component of this, which is the immigration issue, which is separate, but yet is still also important, is the fact that there are 500,000 former STEM H1B visa holders that are now illegal aliens in the United States. That number grows every year because a certain percentage of those, and we see it's about 7 to 10% of the H1B visa holders, when their 3 years is up, they keep staying in America. They don't leave. And they become illegal aliens, some of them declaring asylum or other process, and that's just on the cap. That's the known numbers. Remember, there are companies that have no cap applying to them, and they go beyond the 85,000 every single year. We have over 100,000 H1B visa holders in America taking away jobs from Americans, and of that group, somewhere around 10% of them are staying in America every year without a visa, without documentation, and become illegal aliens, adding to the burden to the American infrastructure in cities like New York, Boston, Chicago, LA, all of them that are being broken by the illegal aliens in the system. New York State is spending $5 billion a year on illegal aliens alone. And part of that number of illegal aliens is the H1B visa overstays, as the Biden administration likes to call them, by Secretary Mayorkas. It's just that simple. So when we talk about this, there's the two parts. H1B visas are bad for an America First economy. That is a fact. They take away jobs from American citizens, that we have a glut of American citizens. We have approximately 6 times as many Americans graduating with degrees looking to get a STEM job than are able to do so. There's just not enough jobs. That's every year. Back when I was running for Congress, that number was 2 to 1. Today, it's 6.5 to 1. 6.5 Americans have a STEM degree and are looking for that one job. In 2013, it was 2 to 1. Am I against the H1B visas? Yes. I think overwhelmingly they are abused. Yes, there are some positions where we do need elite specialists for certain types of jobs, and there aren't a lot of them around the world. That's true. But the overwhelming majority aren't specialized in that way. They're call center jobs. That's not something that we can't have another American do. It's just cheaper to not have an American do it. And that's why big business, especially big tech business, really love H1B visas. They're the largest group that use H1B visa holders because it's cheaper for them. That's not better for the American economy. And as a byproduct of having the H1B visas, especially when we have weak presidents with bad immigration policies, we see growing numbers of people who overstay, who become illegal aliens and a burden into the American system. It's just that simple. So do I understand why Vivek Ramaswamy and why Elon Musk are saying that we need more of them? Well, yes, because we have institutions like Harvard and Columbia that have taught students to have unrealistic expectations of what work is and what they deserve. At the same time that we have a real world need for these jobs in America. We need to focus on America first. And we have a consequence that is further hurting America with those who overstay their welcome and become illegal aliens, criminals in our nation. This took a little bit longer than what you're going to see in any one article, in any one news media outlet. They're going to try and sum this up in a minute and a half on average, maybe even less, and just try to make you think that Trump is in trouble, that the Trump administration doesn't know what it's doing. That's not true. They had a plan, they implemented a plan, and we saw California judges overrule them. Now we see businessmen who are saying, this is good for business, and it's Trump's decision to say, is it better to have those businesses do well, or is it better to have the American people do well? I think Trump will pick the American people, especially when we look at the negative side consequence that is real and unspoken about in any news media. Forbes, Axios, NBC, none of them will mention the side effect, which is illegal aliens. You may agree with Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy, or you may agree with me and think that H1B visas were a good idea in the 1950s, but not so much today, and that we need to focus on the overwhelming number of American citizens who have the technical degrees that can do the job. But at least now you have an honest answer about what is the H1B visa crisis. It isn't so much a problem of the Trump administration. I hope that answers that for you. And I'm happy to speak more about this in the future for anyone who might have a question. I know they didn't want me to talk about it in 2013 when I was running for Congress. Maybe they'll want to talk about it now. I look forward to seeing you this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Why do 70% of critical thinkers ditch Disney Plus? Because they found something better. In today's economy, every dollar counts. So what's worth subscribing to? Let's compare Disney Plus and no Soundbites allowed. With Disney Plus, you're shelling out $140 a year for virtue signaling shows targeting mythical modern audiences. Plus, a theater visit could cost you $40 or more. Ouch. Now imagine a platform where fresh perspectives, insightful interviews, and engaging discussions are at your fingertips. That's no Soundbites allowed. And the best part? It's free with an option to support only if you choose. While Disney Plus ticks off virtue signal checkboxes, no Soundbites allowed offers real talk and sharp analysis. Perfect for those who crave depth and clarity. Why break the bank for entertainment? Subscribe to No Soundbites Allowed and enjoy meaningful content without the hefty price tag.